I asked a little while ago if we would take a little bit of time and think about the people that we've been estranged from. You see, it sets the tone for this story. There's a commercial on TV. It's a farmer's commercial. The kind that they sell insurance. They use their hands to sell insurance. Thank you, by the way, for setting this up for me. You did good. In that commercial, it says, "We know a thing or two because we have seen a thing or two." Let me see your hands. You see, these hands are attached to a whole body that knows a thing or two because they've seen a thing or two and they've done their share of suffering a thing or two. Today's Veterans Day. If you're a veteran, just raise one hand. You don't even have to raise it that high, just raise it. You see, you know a thing or two, don't you? Because you've seen a thing or two, haven't you? If you fought in World War II, would you raise your hand? One? Only one. You know a thing or two, don't you, Jack? Because you've seen a thing or two. Show this man some love. Come on. I've met a fair share of World War II vets. Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm. I've met my fair share of vets that have been in Iraq and Iran, Afghanistan, Kuwait. Every one of them are just like a farmer's commercial. They've seen they know a thing or two because they've seen a thing or two. Without exception, almost every one of those men and women, did you hear what I said? Men and, don't forget that. Don't forget that. Without exception, almost every one of those men and women said that if they had to do it over again, they would go. But because they've seen a thing or two and they know a thing or two, they would never wish that upon this generation. They would never. Yeah, that's right. You would never. Abram was 75 years old. Look at the average age of this congregation. Look around. I don't think we're not quite old enough to be usable yet. Abram was 75 years old when God sent him from Ur to Canaan of Galilee. Is it possible, church, that the only way that we will come to know a thing or two is to see a thing or two in our lives? 75 years old, God makes Abram a promise. He said, I'll bless you. I'll make your name great. Boy, that'll go to your head. If you've ever heard God talk to you and say, oh, I'm going to make you great, that'll go right to your head. I'll bless those who bless you, and I'll curse those who curse you. I don't know if it's what Nancy meant to do a little while ago, but she paraded the kids around, and she allowed them to look at people's hands that had blessed other people. She could have gone to every person in this church. But she knew the preacher would get shot if she had that much time. You see, I think that the reason that God is constantly sending the elderly. Have you noticed that in the Old Testament? He's always sending some old people. You know, those who know a thing or two because they have seen, you've seen a thing or two, haven't you, Kenny? You wouldn't wish anybody comes to your desk and sits down, would you? You wouldn't wish that on anybody, would you, brother? No. You see, it seems like that we have to see a thing or two or know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two before we're finally ready to look at life through God's eyes. Remember Abram? Now that stuff right there will go to your head to be told that you're going to be a blessing, that God will bless you, and God will make your name great, and that God just wants you to bless those who bless you, and that He'll curse. God will curse whoever curses Abram. Now that'll go to your head right there. That'll make you believe that you can't do anything wrong. Abram hadn't seen enough at 75 years old to be a blessing to all the families of the earth. You see, even the blessed people of God get afraid from time to time. Remember, Abram became afraid. Thought he was going to starve to death, and he left the promised land, and he went down to Egypt. He emerges from Egypt a wealthy man. He had more cattle, he had more sheep, goats, and camels than you could count. And Lot came out with that number too. I think I'm finally old enough to understand that God created everything in the heavens and the earth, and God has given us all of these things. They're all ours, and we just have to learn how to share them. But we have to see a thing or two before we know a thing or two about how to be a blessing to all the families there. Church, what I'm trying to suggest is that we need to stop throwing our wise people away. Church, I'm trying to suggest that we are just now at a ripe enough age for God to use us because we all know a thing or two because we have seen a thing or two. And I don't think there's a one of us that would send our young children, not of our age, not a one of us would send our young children into war unless we had to. By this time, Abram and Lot have separated. They're estranged. They're separated. And it was all of those things that looked like such a blessing that had separated them, because they just couldn't get along with each other because of all their stuff. And then there was a war that broke out, and there were 4 kings that tried to overthrow the one evil king. And 4 kings with 4 armies could not go up against the most powerful king. And we still see this every day of our lives in this world. But the Scripture tells us that Abram had 318 men and women. My addition. And they went by night and they defeated what 4 armies could not do together. Why? Because Abram remembered. This do remembrance of me. Abram remembered that Lot, his close relative, was more important than things. Jack, I want to think that when this nation sent you, it was because the people of this world were more important than the things of this world. I want to think that when you were sent, and my dad was sent, who was a casualty of war, that it was because the people were more important than the things the bombs could blow up. If we just remembered that. If we could just remember. He's got the whole world in His hands. He's got the whole world in His hands. He's got the whole world in His hands. He's got the whole world. Stop. Because those are the only words of that song I know. And you know now that I can't sing for nothing. You see, you are more important than all the things of this earth. You're so important that God became just like you and I. And He went to battle. Oh yeah. God sent His Son into a war. Jesus Christ is a veteran of a war. Not against flesh and blood, because people are the most important thing to God. We were created in God's image. We are, you are, and your neighbor is the most important thing in God's eyes. So He suffered estrangement on a cross. But He died to that estrangement. He wasn't in a battle against flesh and blood. He was in a battle against something that we don't really think that much about, we don't really believe in anymore. You ever get caught up in an evil spirit? I do. Time is it? 2 minutes to 12. I still got 2 minutes. I don't know if you got any time or not, but I got 2 minutes. Some things make me mad. Jesus suffered my anger on the cross. Some things make me terribly resentful, and Jesus suffered my resentment on the cross. You know why? Because my spirit of anger and my spirit of wrath and my spirit of gossip and my spirit of wanting to get even and my spirit that insists on my way and wants my way. I'm the oldest of 5, and I'm trying to figure out. You see, I told you I wouldn't ask you to do this, but I'm going to. I'm the oldest of 5 children. And when I graduated seminary, I thought that I'd been called by God and I knew enough to fix. That's the reason why I smiled at you. Because I am a part of the 6 that hadn't been fixed. And I thought that I could fix them. So I know about estrangement. I got put out of the family because I wouldn't play the family reindeer games anymore. I miss my brothers and sisters. We're relatives. They're more important than a high idea. So what do you have this morning that's broke, that needs to be fixed? Stop trying to fix it. He's got the whole world in His hands. He's got me and you in His hands. He's got the little bitty babies in His hands. And only a wise, aged person knows enough because they've seen enough to know that's true.